It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You can see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle over the...
I remember exactly where I was when I heard that John Kennedy had been shot. I was a junior in college. I was 19 years old. I was in American history class.
I was in the 4th grade. I was 9 years old. And our teacher came in and she said, "Boys and girls, I have to tell you that President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas, Texas. He has a 50-50 chance to live or die."
For a second, it didn't really even resonate, because it was never on anyone's radar screen that a president could be shot.
I remember being placed up against the wall of the elementary school, and we were all told that something terrible has happened and the president has been shot.
And we were ordered immediately to go home. And I can tell you that probably the only time in my life I saw junior high school kids do what they were told.
We went to a local bar, to O'Keefe's Bar. I remember that because that's the only place that was a television. There was no television in the school, and we sat there and watched the reports coming in.
The teacher was not in the classroom for over an hour, but interestingly enough, there was no disturbance.
I was on the Supreme Court bench conducting a trial. The case was given to the jury to deliberate on, and he died while the jury was deliberating. And I let the jury continue to deliberate, and when they finished and they gave their verdict, I told them what had happened, and that was it.
And you virtually almost were locked in your homes stunned, in shock, really.
Right as we were being dismissed at about 3:30, she said, "Boys and girls, the president has died." You could hear a pin drop in the room, even though we were 9-year-old kids.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead. Women here in shock, some have fainted. Grown men, Secret Service men standing by the emergency room, tears streaming down their face.
It was a loss of innocence for America. No one believed something like this could happen. And this president who personified American greatness, he, his wife, his family, they were sophisticated, they were smart, they were thoughtful, they were moderate, they were tough.
What everybody would have embodied as Mr. America. Clean-cut, smart, witty, engaging. The kind of person you'd like to be around.
And when he died, when he was shot, it was a different world. It never was the same.
I remember the sadness, the crying in the neighborhood, the screams, and the absolute sadness of the day sticks in my mind.
The next day was my bar mitzvah, and we had to have a big debate in our living room with my uncles and everybody as to whether we should call it off. People had come in from out of town. We went ahead with it. But over 2,000 people came to our synagogue for solace, and I saw such a big audience, I was nervous, and I messed up the whole thing, and my mother was very mad at me.
I remember how unfair that could be, that when you don't like what somebody says, that you just shut them up. And that was something that really stuck with me to this day. And that's one of the reasons why the First Amendment is an important aspect of my practice. We have that right, and we can expect not to be shut down simply because we have a difference of opinion.
We all read about President Kennedy and learned about President Kennedy, were inspired by him. But I think the fact that there was a picture of my father with President Kennedy, and we had these other drawings of President Kennedy, there was a personal connection to the president, made it seem like it was so much more real to me.
John Kennedy was really the first television president, so everyone felt they knew him. We had never been through a national mourning before, and this whole idea of 24-hour coverage was new also. It was like watching an historical movie in real time.
And then, of course, we got to watch a live murder on television on Sunday, and the whole world and the whole United States was watching, I think, just about when Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald.
I'm in my parents' bedroom, my brother and I, and we were jumping on my father, and we're wrestling with him, and he's on his back looking up, and we're jumping on top of him. And he says, "Wait, guys, guys, guys!" And he pushes us away, and we turn around, and I hear someone say, "Oswald has been shot," and they're moving Oswald. He was shot on television, and my father's first reaction was to say, "You see, America's learned nothing in 100 years. The probable assailant of John F. Kennedy didn't get any more than a trial than John Wilkes Booth, who killed Abraham Lincoln."
And then when Oswald was killed, in some ways that was almost a shattering. Not that anybody cared about Oswald, but it seemed like the whole world was collapsing. I mean, it was just crazy. You know, who was next?
Shortly before the dawn of Saturday morning, John Fitzgerald Kennedy comes home to the White House. He had been the nation's 35th president for a period of 2 years and 10 months.
Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? It's 50 years later. I cannot tell you explicitly who did it, but I can tell you who didn't do it. Lee Harvey Oswald.
Probably a lucky shot, whatever. But it was just amazing. Amazing what happened. And I think people can't accept that one man could have done this.
There was much speculation as to whether or not we were being told the truth. It's the first time I think Americans en masse questioned the government.
There were rumors and beliefs amongst many that what happened to Kennedy was the beginning of some kind of an uprising, that Dallas was the fount of some major conspiracy.
People just didn't believe that it happened as simply as it seemed to have happened. And they've been questioning him for years, and they're still working on it.
I don't buy into any conspiracy theories about JFK. First of all, I wouldn't want to. I mean, the idea that the CIA or the FBI or Lyndon Johnson, I mean, you hear all these different conspiracies. No, I don't believe that at all.
People are more apt to try and fantasize and create all types of images that are not real, because we oftentimes don't do a good job of educating each other.
Even if it was the lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, even if it was, part of your investigation is to answer questions for the public, not raise them. And that's what happened.
America would be a completely different country today had John F. Kennedy lived. We don't like to admit to a coup d'etat, but what a coup d'etat is, it means it was a change in government, and it was not done at the ballot box, it was done with a bullet.
Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
When President Kennedy was inaugurated, he was the youngest elected president, succeeding who was at the time the oldest president, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So there really was a sense that this was a generational shift. And to have that presidency concluded so tragically and so abruptly, I think has really left a sense of what might have been.
You know, we don't know what he would have done with Vietnam. I mean, we had us in Vietnam. His people say he would have gotten us out. You don't know. There's so much civil rights legislation. He had proposed it, but it hadn't gone anywhere yet.
He had stood up to Russia in the Cuban Missile Crisis. That made all Americans proud. This is a guy who stood up without brandishing a gun. He stood up to one of the gravest perils this world has ever seen.
Where does Kennedy rank in history? The public opinion polls almost always have him kind of in the high average, that could have been, you know, didn't have enough time to finish everything he wanted, but it was a presidency of great promise. And I think that that puts him higher in the rankings of historians as well as the general public.
Well, I think President Kennedy's real legacy is hope. It wasn't as much what he did, it was what people believed he would eventually do. There was a sense that in his heart that there was an America beyond the dreams of any previous president.
A lot of people's legacies is based upon how they inspired the other people and the hopes and dreams of what we could be.
He looked like America, and he looked like the hope of America.
The president's whole persona and his language was very inspirational, and it had us aspire to something better than we were. The whole idea of ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It's such an aspirational, wonderful thought that we all should be part of this together.
That concept of that we are essentially united together with one interest. And if we start to think about ourselves as Americans and then recognize the diversity that makes us rich, we're all the more rich.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.